Can't go any higher than that. What are you doing with that marmoset on your head? Well, it seems comfortable up there, I guess.
That's right.
Look at that.
That's where they feel safe, when they're kind of up and look at something, and they like the hair because they would hang on to the female. So they want.
He ruled late-night TV for 30 years, but only after Johnny Carson's death did the truth emerge about his icy relationships, deep insecurities, and private disdain for Hollywood's phoniness. Behind the charm was a man who enforced strict boundaries, cut ties over loyalty breaches, and retreated from fame the moment he could. What fans are just now discovering paints a very different picture of the king of late night. Johnny Carson hosted The Tonight Show from 1962 to 1992, becoming a television legend. He created the format that late-night hosts still use today: the opening monologue, celebrity interviews, comedy sketches, and musical performances. But while he appeared warm and approachable on TV, Carson kept his real self carefully guarded from both the public and many of his colleagues. People who worked with Carson knew he had strict rules for guests on his show. They were told never to touch Johnny. No hugs or pats on the back. His desk items, especially his pens, were completely off limits. Most importantly, guests were warned not to mess with Carson's appearance, a rule that Burt Reynolds would famously break in one of the show's most memorable moments. Carson's relationship with Reynolds shows how complicated his Hollywood connections really were. On screen, they had amazing chemistry that viewers loved. Their back-and-forth jokes and unexpected moments made for great television that felt spontaneous and genuine, even when parts were carefully planned. The most famous moment between them happened when Reynolds suddenly pulled out scissors during an appearance and cut Carson's tie in half. The audience gasped before bursting into laughter. Carson stayed professional on camera, even cutting a piece of Reynolds' clothing in return to play along with the joke. But behind the scenes, Carson was not happy. Crew members later revealed he was clearly annoyed after the show ended. Reynolds had broken one of Carson's most important rules by messing with his carefully maintained appearance, crossing a line that few dared to cross. Years later, Reynolds shared his perspective on their relationship.
Here's the thing that guys like me are most jealous about. You were friends with Johnny Carson. Not only that, but you hosted The Tonight Show many times. What was Johnny like? Why did you guys think you had so much chemistry between each other?
You know, I really don't know. It happened the first night. I walked out, and I looked in his eyes, and I looked in mine, and it was something happened. It was magic. We just had a fabulous thing going.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and he just let me go. I mean, and I was smart enough to let him set him up for a couple of jokes.
Yeah.
And then he would give me one.
That was the deal? He gets two, you get one?
He gets two, I get one.
That's a nice deal.
And later I had to give him 4.
Reynolds said in an interview before his death, he described their friendship as both competitive and respectful, with clear boundaries between their public and private lives. Carson's relationship with Bob Hope tells us even more about his true feelings toward fellow celebrities. Even though Hope appeared on The Tonight Show more than 100 times, Carson privately disliked these segments and found them increasingly difficult to endure as Hope aged. Carson's biggest complaint was that Hope couldn't think on his feet. As someone who valued natural conversation, Carson found Hope's dependence on prepared jokes frustrating. Hope's appearances seemed spontaneous to viewers, but were actually carefully planned, with the aging comedian completely relying on written material and cue cards. Despite Carson's personal feelings, NBC's relationship with Hope meant that the comedian could essentially book himself on the show whenever he wanted, particularly when promoting his specials. This arrangement frustrated Carson, who felt he had no choice but to welcome Hope despite his growing dislike of these segments. Carson's relationship with Joan Rivers reveals even more about his true feelings toward Hollywood loyalty. Rivers was a frequent guest and occasional host, seemingly close with Carson. When NBC offered Rivers her own competing late-night show in 1986, Carson felt deeply betrayed, not because she took the opportunity, but because she never told him personally before the news became public. Rivers later claimed Carson told her, "You will never be on this show again," and he kept his word. She remained banned from The Tonight Show until 2014, long after Carson's death, when Jimmy Fallon finally welcomed her back. The feud was so significant that even Jay Leno, Carson's immediate successor, maintained the ban out of respect for Carson. Unlike these difficult relationships, Carson had a genuine friendship with comedian Don Rickles. Carson truly appreciated Rickles' authentic personality and quick wit. When Rickles appeared on the show, Carson would often laugh uncontrollably at his unpredictable humor, showing a rare glimpse of genuine emotion. Carson's personal life also showed his complicated relationship with fame. He was married 4 times, to Jody Wolcott, 1949 to 1963, Joanne Copeland, 1963 to 1972, Joanna Holland, 1972 to 1983, and Alexis Moss, 1987 to 2005. These relationships often suffered under the pressure of his celebrity status and his emotional distance. His busy career put a heavy strain on his marriages. The long hours, public attention, and Carson's tendency to keep people at arm's length created problems that were hard to overcome. Though viewers never saw it, Carson struggled with drinking problems and a quick temper that contributed to his marital difficulties. During divorce proceedings with his second wife, Joanne Copeland, it came to light that Carson's alcoholism was at the heart of their troubles. Court documents revealed Carson was deeply insecure and routinely suspected Copeland of cheating. When he discovered she had a secret apartment where she was meeting another man, Carson's darker side emerged, leading to increased drinking and depression. When his son Richard died in a car accident in 1991, Carson's carefully controlled emotions briefly showed through. During the show where he paid tribute to his son, Carson took longer than his producer Fred de Cordova thought appropriate. When signaled to wrap up, Carson reportedly became furious, banning de Cordova from the set for the rest of the show's run, despite de Cordova retaining his title as executive producer. Even Carson's relationship with Ed McMahon, his sidekick for 30 years, was primarily professional. McMahon later shared that while they respected each other, Carson kept his emotional distance even from those closest to him at work. This professional boundary allowed their on-screen chemistry to thrive while maintaining Carson's need for personal space. Carson's mixed feelings about Hollywood shaped his later years. After retiring in 1992, he almost completely disappeared from public life, very different from many celebrities who can't step out of the spotlight. This retreat suggested Carson had grown tired of the industry that made him famous and preferred privacy to continued attention. Carson explained about his retirement. "I just felt it was time to get out while people still wanted me." But many believe his withdrawal showed a deeper discomfort with fame itself, a sentiment he occasionally expressed even at the height of his success. Carson once told a reporter, "I'm not comfortable being famous." This simple statement offers insight into a man who, despite his success, never fully embraced the Hollywood lifestyle that many of his guests eagerly pursued. The stories that came out after his death in 2005 show a brilliant performer who kept strict boundaries between his public and private lives, a man who could entertain millions while remaining in many ways a mystery to those who watched him every night. Through these revelations, we gain a more complete understanding of the man behind the desk, whose influence on American culture remains significant even as we learn about the complexity that lay beneath his charming facade. What if I told you that one of NASCAR's most beloved icons once nearly lost it all? Before the $300 million empire, before the sprawling 200-acre estate, Dale Earnhardt Jr. made a decision that could have destroyed everything his family had built. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the untold financial journey of NASCAR's favorite son, revealing the high-stakes gambles, silent struggles, and brilliant business moves that racing fans have never heard before. While millions watched him dominate the track, nobody saw the financial chess match playing out behind the scenes. By the end of this expose, you'll understand why Dale Jr.'s greatest victory wasn't won behind the wheel, but in boardrooms and back offices where fortunes are truly made. Growing up as the son of NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt Sr. came with expectations that would crush most people. What fans don't realize is that Dale Jr. was initially hesitant to follow in his father's tire tracks. In fact, according to insiders, young Dale originally pursued automotive technology not to race, but because he feared he might need a real job if racing didn't pan out. This practical mindset would later become the foundation of his financial empire. Unlike many athletes who squander their earnings, Dale Jr. approached his wealth with the same calculated precision he showed on the track. While collecting trophies on Sundays, Monday through Friday, he was strategically building a business portfolio that would eventually eclipse his racing income. At the height of his racing career, Dale Jr. was pulling in between $25 to $30 million annually, making him NASCAR's highest-paid driver from 2008 to 2015. But here's what the cameras never captured. Dale was reinvesting nearly 80% of his earnings back into business ventures that experts considered extremely risky at the time. The biggest gamble? JR Motorsports, his racing team that initially hemorrhaged money. Everyone thought I was crazy, Dale once confided to a close associate. They said owning a team would bankrupt me. For the first 3 years, the venture operated deeply in the red, with Dale personally covering millions in losses against the advice of financial experts. That decision, which seemed financially reckless at the time, has now become one of his most valuable assets, transforming from a money pit into a cornerstone of his $300 million empire. While fans marvel at his 200-acre Mooresville estate with its go-kart track and collection of vintage cars, few know about Dale Jr.'s strategic real estate investments across the American South. Sources close to the racing star reveal he has quietly amassed over 40 commercial properties in 5 states, many purchased during the 2008 recession when prices bottomed out. Dale saw opportunity when everyone else saw disaster, says a former business partner who requested anonymity. He was buying prime commercial real estate at 30 cents on the dollar while other celebrities were selling their assets in panic. These properties now generate an estimated $15 million in annual passive income, money that continues flowing whether he's on the track or not. When Dale Jr. transitioned from driver to broadcaster, fans viewed it as a natural evolution for the charismatic racer. What they didn't see was the brilliant contract negotiation happening behind closed doors. Industry insiders report that Dale's broadcasting agreement with NBC Sports contains unprecedented profit-sharing clauses tied to advertising revenue that his segments generate. This means that unlike other retired athletes who simply collect a salary, Dale Jr. essentially owns a percentage of the commercial airtime during his segments, a deal structure that has never been replicated in sports broadcasting. Perhaps the most closely guarded secret involves Dale's inheritance following his father's tragic death in 2001. Contrary to public assumption, Dale Jr. did not immediately receive a windfall. In fact, complicated estate planning issues created a financial strain that Dale Jr. never publicly discussed. There were years right after his father's passing where Dale was asset-rich but cash-poor, reveals a longtime family friend. He was worth millions on paper but sometimes struggled with liquidity. This little-known financial pressure forced Dale Jr. to become more financially savvy than most athletes, learning hard lessons about wealth management that would later serve him well. While Dale Jr.'s charitable foundation is well known, what remains hidden is the extent of his anonymous giving. According to those in his inner circle, Dale Jr. has a strict policy about unpublicized donations that often exceed his public charitable work. One former assistant claims that Dale personally covers medical expenses for several families of former racing crew members who fell on hard times, with the strict condition that his involvement never be disclosed. These private acts of generosity reportedly account for millions in annual giving that never appear in public records. While traditional NASCAR fans celebrate Dale's on-track achievements, they're largely unaware of his tech investments that have quietly become some of his most valuable assets. Dale was an early investor in several racing simulation platforms and esports teams, ventures that initially seemed like hobbies but have exploded in value as digital racing has gained mainstream popularity. Dale saw the digital future of racing before most of the industry did, explains a tech entrepreneur who partnered with Earnhardt on a venture in 2015. He understood that the next generation of race fans would experience the sport differently. His foresight led to early investments in technologies that are now standard in racing, positioning him to profit from the sport's digital evolution. Dale Jr. has masterfully leveraged his name and likeness in ways that continue to generate substantial revenue streams. Unlike many athletes who sign away rights for quick paydays, Dale maintains strict control over his personal brand with specific limited licensing agreements that typically include revenue sharing rather than flat fees. This strategy has created what business analysts call perpetual income, money that continues flowing regardless of his active participation in the sport. His merchandise continues to outsell many active drivers years after his retirement. Today, with a net worth of $300 million, Dale Earnhardt Jr. isn't just wealthy by NASCAR standards. He's become one of America's most successful athlete entrepreneurs. Yet despite his financial success, those close to him say he remains surprisingly frugal in certain aspects of his life, still changing the oil in his own cars and negotiating deals personally rather than delegating to an army of agents. As for the future, sources close to Dale Jr. reveal he's quietly assembling a diversified investment portfolio designed to reach the billion-dollar mark within the next decade, a goal that would make him the first NASCAR driver to join the billionaire ranks. The true story of Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s fortune isn't just about inheriting a famous name or winning races. It's about strategic vision, calculated risks, and business acumen that fans rarely glimpse. While they cheered his on-track victories, his greatest achievements may have happened far from public view, in the quiet decisions that transformed racing success into lasting wealth. For a man who made his name turning left at 200 miles per hour, Dale Jr.'s most impressive feat might be navigating the treacherous financial turns that derail so many professional athletes. And that might be his most valuable legacy of all, showing that in wealth, as in racing, it's not just about how fast you go, but how smartly you drive.
Hailie Degan making a name for herself in the racing world, full-time here in ARCA this year. What's the big term plan for you?
Man, it's been crazy, just the ARCA series, so many cool tracks that we get to go to, but long term, obviously, the end goal is to make it to the Cup Series, which any racer here, that's their end goal. So I know we all got the same thing in mind, but yeah, it's a work in progress, learning curve. It's going to take time, a lot of development.
The roar of engines, the smell of burning rubber, the checkered flag waving in the distance. NASCAR, a world dominated by male drivers for decades. But there's one name challenging the status quo, a name that makes NASCAR executives nervous, a name they'd prefer you didn't look too closely at, Hailie Degan. At just 21 years old, this California native isn't just breaking records. She's shattering the entire NASCAR paradigm. But her journey to the top hasn't been the fairy tale NASCAR's marketing team wants you to believe. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what NASCAR doesn't want you to know about Hailie Degan, the untold struggles, the family legacy they downplay, and the raw determination that threatens to revolutionize the sport forever. Most racing fans know Hailie Degan as the promising young talent in the Craftsman Truck Series, driving the number 19 Monster Energy Toyota Camry. What they don't know is that Hailie's path to NASCAR was predetermined before she could even walk. Born into motorsport royalty, Hailie's father isn't just any dad, he's Brian Degan, the motocross legend and co-founder of Metal Militia. NASCAR's carefully crafted narrative often minimizes this connection, preferring to paint Hailie as a self-made prodigy rather than acknowledge the motorsport dynasty she comes from. Why? Because NASCAR thrives on the small-town hero narrative, the notion that anyone from anywhere can make it to the top with enough grit and determination. The reality of racing's dynastic nature doesn't fit neatly into this marketing strategy. What NASCAR doesn't advertise is that by age 7, while most kids were learning to ride bikes without training wheels, Hailie was already dominating dirt tracks. By 8, she had graduated to trophy kart racing. And on her high school graduation day, she skipped the ceremony to compete in a race. This isn't just passion, it's programming. The Degan family doesn't just race. They live and breathe speed, danger, and competition. But here's what really makes NASCAR executives uncomfortable. Hailie Degan isn't playing by their rules. In 2018, she made history by becoming the first woman to win a NASCAR K&N Pro Series race. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not this soon, not this dramatically. Female drivers in NASCAR have traditionally been positioned as novelties, not champions. They're marketed for their appearance first, talent second. Hailie flipped that script, forcing NASCAR to reckon with a female driver who couldn't be relegated to female driver status. She was simply a winner. And then there's the money. The racing industry has a vested interest in maintaining the myth that success comes primarily through talent rather than financial backing. The uncomfortable truth? Racing is one of the most expensive sports to break into. While NASCAR happily promotes Hailie's $450,000 per season salary, what they don't emphasize is the millions required to get to that point. From her earliest dirt bike days through multiple racing series, the Degan family's investment in Hailie's career likely reaches into 7 figures. This is the dark secret of motorsports that organizations like NASCAR prefer to keep quiet, the astronomical financial barriers to entry that keep talented drivers from disadvantaged backgrounds from ever getting a shot.